Okay, so today in this class we will see the basic part of a class and the object, which is constructor. I think you've done it in the lab also. Lab ko that Digmishar's content modules have this thing, but then to give you a theoretical aspect to it. Now, why do we need the constructor? We need constructor to initialize something. Initialize, what do we initialize? The name itself says it's a constructor. So I'm constructing an object. How do I construct the object? I construct the object using what? Using my constructor. All right. So constructor is a simple mechanism wherein uh, wherein you'll have a simple method. Wherein you'll have a simple method, like we write method, we write constructor as a method itself. We write it as a method itself, and we have certain few things to remember when we write a constructor. Then they are like it is normally has a same name as of the class name. It is it does not have a return value, and the constructors can be can multiple constructors can be used. It can be overloaded, and constructor is generally used to initialize the object. If you know this 4 5 things, then your constructor definition is done. Then let's say this, what do I do here is I'm trying to define a constructor. How do I define a constructor? It's like very much easier. It's like simple as your initializing your mm, simple method. All right, it's like a method. So class name you have, because a name of a class is class name. So I write a public method which is a class name, which does not have a return type, and it should have a same name as of a class name. And when I write anything inside this body, it should initialize the data fields. Okay, that's the only purpose we have. And we don't need to call, because there is no explicit invocation statement. We don't have to call that like a dot something, b dot something, like that. We don't have to call it. It is called automatically when the object is created. Remember that. Okay, so let's say this. Let's see here what we have done. It is we have a constructor called counter, wherein I'm initializing the counter index, which is a data member of a class counter, to 0. And what am I doing here is I'm increasing the counter value, I'm decreasing the counter value, and I'm just getting the counter value, get the counter index. So these three are what? These three are the method. Obviously, this is also a method, but this is a constructor. All right. Now let's see. Let's see. I have called this constructor here because yeah, yo moment at this point of time, the constructor will be invoked automatically because I have written new counter. Now it will create the object. While creating the object, the constructor will be called. This constructor will be called, and त्यो object को, which object को? Counter one को, counter once counter index value becomes 0. Counter 1 को counter index value becomes 0. Then what did I do? I increased it. 1 भयो. Then what did I do? I got it in A. A मा ल्यायो. A को value 1 भयो. Counter 1 dot increase फेरि counter 1 लाई increase गर्यो. है? Counter 1 dot increase गर्यो. Counter 1 dot increase भयो. 2 भयो. फेरि त्यसलाई B मा हाल्यो. B मा 2 छ. If A greater than B, do something. If A is less than B, do something. What it is, you just print it. Now I want you to find out what is the output of this code. Okay, it will come in the exam also. Please remember this. Now, what if I have something, because in this case what happens? It's a static one, isn't it? Counter index 0 cha. So if I make counter 1, त्यो पनि 0 हुन्छ. If I make counter 2, that also becomes 0. Counter 3, if I make, that also becomes 0. Now what if I have something to initialize with? Let's say I may have a counter index to be initialized at 1, as 10, as 20, something like that. So if you have something which is to be done from the user side, if user has to supply the initial value, then it is known as parameterized constructor. It is known as parameterized constructor. We can do that. So what did I do is just counter index लाई मैले के गरेँ यो initial value भन्ने अघि मैले लिएको थिएँ यहाँनिर in the counter wherein I have an argument called init value. Init value I have assigned it to counter index. But here you have to remember one thing, that counter index को value as well as, or let's see this counter को data member को name and this local name, if it is same, that means यहाँ पनि counter index चाहिँ लगायो भने चाहिँ then this will have a problem, because this is a local function. So local function will always have a tendency to use local variables. So यहाँनिर counter index variable छ भने चाहिँ counter index is equals to counter index लेख्यो भने चाहिँ के हुन्छ, त्यो counter index यो local value लाई यसले initialize गरिदिन्छ, यसमा initialize हुँदैन. So that we'll see how it can be removed. We'll see that we have a operator for that. Okay, so in order to call this constructor, I am writing here something like this. पहिला मैले के लेखेको थिएँ, counter 1 equals to new counter लेखेको थिएँ, which was initialized to 0. Now I said counter 2 is equals to new counter 10. यो 10 कहाँ गयो, init value मा गयो. init value को 10 कहाँ गयो, counter index को मा गयो. कसको counter index मा गयो, counter 2 को counter index मा गयो. Alright, so this is can also be done. We can also have multiple constructors like this. See, if I have a circle have a multiple parameters, है ना, एउटा x छ, एउटा y छ. In order to identify the center, then once center is identified, त्यसको radius चाहियो, then a circle can be drawn like this. So यसको यो x र y को point छ मेरोमा, x र y को point छ, and then I have a radius. So तिनटै point initialize गर्नुको लागि चाहिँ I have a constructor having a multiple parameters. Now I can do this. See, then you can see this in a circle wherein I have a new circle. That means I am initializing the value of x, y, and r as 10, 20, and 5. So this is what happens. See, a circle is called a new concept. At the time of creation, the center and radius are not defined. पहिला चाहिँ यहाँनिर first much it was not defined because there was no constructor. Now once I write the constructor something like this and call the value something like this, then all those value will be initialized 10, 20, and 5. Okay, now we can have a multiple constructor. As I told you, we can also have a multiple constructors like this. See, this is one constructor, this is another constructor, this is another constructor, right? The one constructor having x, y, and radius. Another constructor has only radius where x and y are 0 because I am drawing it from the 0 itself. यहीँबाट मेरो circle बनिन्छ है. And another circle has all the three 0. So this is a constructor overloading. Now you have a 3 different constructor being called and they have been initialized. See, you have, it's a self-explanatory, sir. You can see this. Okay, so I'll stop here. I'll continue in the next.